Hi, I'm Norm and this is Strangely Canadian. In today's video, 10 strange tales from Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland and Labrador make up a single province in Canada. Newfoundland is the island portion of the province, while Labrador is part of mainland Canada, bordered by Quebec. Newfoundland is one of the first places settled by Europeans in the New World. Newfoundland and Labrador have many strange tales and customs. Let's explore 10 of those. Number 1. The iron ore mine. Iron ore was found in the province going back as far as 1578, but mining did not seriously begin until the 1890s. These mines reach out about 3 miles under the ocean floor. In 1950, the first mine was closed and the last one was closed in 1966. Several tragic accidents have occurred in these mines over the years, and to this day, miners have been seen by visitors both inside, which is now sealed off, and outside of the mines. An entire shift of ghostly miners has been seen by witnesses exiting one of the mines at right about the time the shift change would have been set. Number 2. Peter EASTON. Peter EASTON was a pirate in the area and built his own army of fishermen and attacked French, Spanish, and Basque ships. EASTON sailed into Harbor Grace with a captured Spanish vessel, the San Sebastian, in tow. He saw the flags on his fort were in the wrong order and realized his stronghold had been captured. 5 Basque ships sailed across the mouth of the harbor to blockade him, but EASTON knew the harbor and the winds better and was able to escape. In the process, he fired on and sank the Basque ship St. Malo, somewhere near what is now known as Easton Rock, close to the Harbor Grace Islands. Somewhere ashore, it is said 47 pirates were buried in a mass, unmarked grave, guarding a vast treasure. There are several other treasure stories attributed to EASTON around the province, but other pirates such as Captain Kidd and a Turkish pirate, who each are rumored to have hidden treasure somewhere on Newfoundland's jagged coasts. Number 3. Chez Brienne Restaurant. This building has a lot of history. Before it was a restaurant, it was used as an inn or apartments. A woman woke up in this building with a ghostly man floating above her. The woman was unable to move, and as she laid paralyzed, the strange man placed 2 coins over her eyes. He seemed to be preparing her for burial. In fact, this building was also used as a funeral home. Another woman's ghost has been seen by staff and visitors wandering the hallways. She has a long, jagged scar down her body as if from an autopsy. Number 4. The BEOTHUK. The BEOTHUK were a group of Indigenous people who lived on the island of Newfoundland. They survived on fishing and hunting caribou and seals. When the Europeans came, the BEOTHUK vanished. It is believed that they migrated away from the Europeans, moving inland. Now this led to starvation, as they could no longer fish or hunt seals. And then once the caribou ran out, they had nothing left to eat. Several women were captured and taken to the settlements to serve as slaves. And it is believed that the BEOTHUK starved or died from smallpox and tuberculosis. But it is also rumored that they were hunted for sport by the European settlers, the Vikings. In 1960, Norwegian archaeologists Helga and Ann Ingstead uncovered the ruins of Viking buildings in Meadows. The 8 to 9 buildings were clearly of Norse origin and dated back to somewhere between 990 and 1050 Common Era. This places the Vikings as finding the New World roughly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. The question is, where did the Vikings go? Did they return to Norway? Did they integrate with the natives? Did they perish? Some say this area is Vinland, from the Viking sagas, while others say it is not because there are no grapes growing in Newfoundland. However, wild grapes do grow in Quebec and New Brunswick, which, by sea, are not that far away. And considering where the Vikings came from, traveling from Newfoundland to Quebec or to New Brunswick is not a problem. Number 6. Hag with 2 faces. Bell Island is definitely a strange place. A banshee is believed to wander Dobbin's Garden and the surrounding marshland. It is reported to appear in two forms: a beautiful woman dressed in white or a frightening old hag. Legends say that men who go near this area have mysteriously gone missing for days at a time. When they emerge from the marshland, they are completely unaware about the time loss. Their only memories are a putrid smell and a grotesque old woman in ragged clothes crawling towards them from the bushes, forcing them to the ground with the smell of death. Number 7. Red Cloaked Spirit. A spirit is said to haunt the local cemetery in Trinity. The woman, who appears wearing a red cloak, sometimes in the presence of a hearse, is believed to be Nancy Colley. In the 19th century, there were no morgues in St. John's. In the 1840s, the government paid a standing salary to Nancy, who cared for the unidentified dead, preparing their bodies for burial. Many unidentified bodies were found in the harbor. Nancy was said to have brought many of those corpses back to life in her time. One Dutch sailor had been nailed up in his coffin at Nancy's when he suddenly revived. After a drink or two of rum, he was his own man again. After so many of these deceased in her custody resurrected, it was believed that she was a witch. The Headless Ghost. This legend dates to 1745. Samuel Pettyham rented a house on the outskirts of town, and one night as he was being driven home in a carriage from a friend's house, the horse stopped and would not budge. Pettyham got out and offered to walk the rest of the way. Upon entering the laneway of his little house, he spotted what looked like a lantern carried by another person, so he hurried to meet with them. When the figure stepped into the moonlight, Pettyham took one look and fled back to Queen's Road, swearing he would never spend another night at that house. He claimed to have seen a tall man with his head completely severed, almost at the shoulder. The headless specter in question is the ship's captain. He was in love with a beautiful woman who lived in Pettyham's house on the outskirts of town. When he was at sea, the woman flirted with a local man who was jealous and decided to rid himself of competition. One night, as the captain was leaving the little house, the other man cut his head off close to the shoulders. The legend says the murderer was never tried, and now the headless captain's soul still roams the site where he was murdered, looking for his killer. Number 9. The Last Official Duel. Robinson's Hill is said to be the location of the last official duel in history. Witnesses claim that the loser's ghost roams the streets. On March the 30th, 1826, Captain Mark Rudkin and Ensign John Philpott began this duel over the affections of Miss Colleen. Both men used pistols. Philpott's shot missed his intended target. Rudkin had fired aimlessly into the air in hopes to settle this disagreement, but Philpott refused and prepared the second shot. The second shot proved to be fatal for Philpott, who was wounded and died a short time after. This spooky gun shooting duel carries on, and at night you may be able to catch a glimpse of the battle. Number 10. Crescent Lake Monster. Crescent Lake in Roberts Arm, Notre Dame Bay is said to be the home of a lake monster. CRESSIE is said to be a snake-like creature between 20 and 40 feet long and brown in color. It was first sighted in the 1950s and is still actually spotted by people regularly. Believers in the giant eel point to a strange phenomenon some say can be seen as proof that CRESSIE does lurk beneath the surface. There are large holes that appear in the thick sheet of ice on Crescent Lake in the winter. These are often mistaken as the result of tragic snowmobile accidents, but divers who have explored the lake to try to see if these holes were man-made didn't find anything. And so people kind of think that maybe these holes were created not by something falling into the ice, but by something bursting out through it. One of the more recent sightings happened during an underwater search for the body of a downed pilot. Divers who braved the depths in hopes of finding the pilot found themselves surrounded by a school of vicious, gigantic eels. Their bodies were said to be about as thick as a man's thigh. The eels proceeded to attack them, and luckily the divers were able to retreat without getting too seriously injured. A lot of people believe that these were maybe CRESSIE's babies. There you have 10 strange tales from the Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Click here to see some of my other videos, or here to subscribe. See you next time when I bring you more tales that are strangely Canadian.